I grew up in western Oklahoma in the 80s, and for those of you who followed the western Oklahoma or Oklahoma at all in the 80s, it was a growing, thriving state. Late 70s, early 80s, and then oil price dropped from $30 to $12. Some banks had some major issues, and when that occurred is when I was 8, 9 years old. Oklahoma was not a great place to be, and no one in Oklahoma liked the oil business because they had all just made a fortune with it and lost a fortune with it. A lot has changed since then, and this state is thriving again. I'm proud to be a native Oklahoman, and for me, the future of my company is going to be a lot greater and a lot better because of what I witnessed in the 80s. Instead of carrying billions of dollars in debt, we do our business on a cash basis. Instead of gambling with every chance every angle we can, we try to keep things as straight and smooth and as low risk as we possibly can. So appreciate you taking the time to view this.
Oil, black gold, Texas tea. The quest for this lifeblood of the world's economy has produced tycoons and paupers. Men like Harry Sinclair, J. Paul Getty, and John D. Rockefeller made their fortunes in the early oil fields and refinement centers of the United States. The world's first reported oil well was drilled in China in 347 AD. Using bits attached to bamboo poles, that first well reached a depth of 800 feet. American Indians had known of oil in western Pennsylvania and had made some use of it for many years before the mid-19th century. Early European explorers noted seeps of oil and natural gas in western Pennsylvania and New York. In the United States, George Bissell and Edwin L. Drake are credited with the first successful use of a drilling rig on a well drilled especially to produce oil, at a site on Oil Creek near Titusville, Pennsylvania in 1859. The Drake well is often referred to as the first commercial oil well. At that time, new types of machinery being produced increasingly needed oil for lubrication and kerosene for lamps. Up until then, oil was obtained by digging out seeps, where the oil came to the surface of the earth. It was soon realized that something more efficient was needed to supply the growing needs for oil. Someone had to find a way to extract oil from the ground. In 1859, retired railroad conductor Edwin L. Drake constructed a derrick at oil seeps near Titusville, Pennsylvania, with the assistance of an experienced salt brine well driller known as Uncle Billy Smith. Crude, primitive tools and a handmade steam engine enabled them to drill at a rate of 3 feet per day. A depth of 69.5 feet had been reached with no encouraging signs when one Sunday morning, Uncle Billy noticed something unusual. Upon inspecting the borehole, he discovered they had struck oil. The date was August 28, 1859. Edwin Drake and his associates had proven that oil in substantial quantities could be obtained by drilling. The boom was on. The oil from Drake's well was funneled into whiskey barrels and was soon producing a steady supply of about 400 gallons of pure oil every 24 hours, far in excess of what had been collected from oil seeps. Drake never patented his idea, permitting anyone access to use his methods. Drake himself only drilled 2 more wells for the Seneca Company and never became a success in oil speculation. However, the Drake well brought about the discovery of more fields nearby. This resulted in the creation of many oil companies in the region. An entrepreneur named John D. Rockefeller heard about the strike and soon put his genius for organizing companies to action in the U.S. oil industry. In 1859, he and a partner built a small oil refinery. By 1867, Rockefeller and his brother William, along with S.V. Harkness and Henry M. Flagler, joined together to create what would become the Standard Oil Company. By 1870, Standard had become the dominant oil refining firm in Pennsylvania. With the success of the Drake well, adventurous men across the country struck out in search of rich oil fields in Texas, Louisiana, Colorado, and Oklahoma. Many could not afford the luxury of a derrick and steam-powered drilling system. Innovative oil men used a system known as a spring pole to power the drilling cable up and down. Having long been used to drill salt brine wells, the spring pole consisted of a flexible branch mounted on a fulcrum, with the drilling cable and bit suspended on the free end of the pole. The crew would hop up and down in the stirrups attached to the pole to make the bit jump up and down and chop a new hole. Strong backs and legs, along with a great deal of patience, supplied the power to drill a few feet a day. While repeatedly kicking down a stirrup was primitive and slow, the spring pole's rope and chisel were practical drilling technologies. The spring pole system was soon replaced by the steam-powered system for most wells. Using the concept of chiseling a hole deeper and deeper into the earth, but adding the force of steam power, wells could be drilled far more efficiently. Frequent stops were needed to remove the chipped-away rock and other material, bail out water, and sharpen the bit. Bull wheels and hemp rope repeatedly hoisted and dropped, heavy iron drill strings, and a curious variety of bits deep into the borehole. Early transportation of oil from the well site included whiskey barrels pulled by horse-drawn wagons, and later horse-drawn tanks. When possible, barges and ramps were employed to ship the oil. In 1865, the firm of Murray Douglas and Company developed a small flat car with two wooden tubs for the transportation of oil. Dubbed a tub car, this car is believed to be one of the first tank cars ever built. Crude refining plants, or stills, boiled and separated into the two items in demand: kerosene for lamps and heavy lubricants. An undesirable product, considered dangerous and unusable, was discarded in great quantities. The product was gasoline. On January 10, 1901, at Spindletop Hill near Beaumont, Texas, a major strike was made. What is known as the Lucas Gusher or the Lucas Geyser blew oil over 150 feet in the air at a rate of 100,000 barrels per day. Within a year, more than 1,500 oil companies had been chartered, and oil became the dominant fuel of the 20th century and an integral part of the American economy. On November 22, 1905, wildcatters Robert Galbraith and Frank Chesley struck oil on the Oklahoma Creek Indian Reservation near Tulsa, Oklahoma. The well they were drilling was named the Ida E. Glen No. 1, after the Creek Indian woman who owned the land. The well blew in over the derrick with a gusher flowing 75 barrels of oil per day. It was Oklahoma's first major oil field and the richest field the world had yet seen. Bob and Frank named the Glen Pool after Ida. Within 2 years, pipelines had been laid up from the Texaco and Gulf refineries on the Gulf Coast and down from the Standard Oil Refinery in Kansas to access the high-quality crude. Dozens of other refineries were built in the Tulsa area. That same year, 1907, Oklahoma became a state. During that year, Oklahoma produced more oil than any other state in the United States and any other country in the world. By the early 20th century, oil fields throughout the United States were flourishing. Oilman Jodan Trigg's family was a part of this adventurous breed in those early days.